Hey everyone, it's Stefan Adams, and I have two new videos from Bryan too I'd like to talk about. Basically, long story short, Bryan 2 did a search for his own name on YouTube because he's so obsessed with himself, and he found out about my channel and he found out about Omni Eris's channel. Now let's just say Bryan's not too pleased. He makes all sorts of ridiculous accusations and accuses me of being not a person, but he thinks I'm just a supercomputer. I'm not a real person. So anyway, I'll go through bits and pieces of the video. I'll fast forward through some of the stuff that bores me. If you want to see the whole thing unedited, just go over to Bryan's channel. You'll find part one and part two. So anyway, without further ado, here's Bryan's insane paranoid rambling yet again.
Hi, it's Bryan too. It's 7 o'clock in the morning on the 20th of August 2021 in Madrid, Spain. Just wanted to give people a basic example of how the government uses chatterbots, which are automated special language software.
Yes, according to Bryan, anyone who doesn't like him, doesn't agree with him, is part of the government. That's how it is with Bryan.
Programs, not even real people, they're just software.
Yes, Bryan, I'm just software. I'm not a real person. Where did you come up with that nonsense?
And cyber stalkers, which are real people, crisis actors generally.
Or I might be upgraded to a crisis actor. Hey, at least there's some humanity in that. Better than being just an algorithm.
To discredit targeted individuals. If I were to come here, I could just show you, a bunch of these different videos that they have. I must be doing something right
LOL. Whatever you say, Bryan.
because they are definitely. Definitely got the government's attention. Of they wouldn't be dedicated to trying to discredit me. This is nothing. There are websites on the internet that are dedicated to me. Dedicated, I should say, to discredit me.
Bryan, you discredit yourself. Just about every video you put out is delusional, rambling, paranoid nonsense to the average person. Trust me, the average person does not need my help to show that you're an idiot. Okay, Bryan? I do this because you're a basket case. You're fascinating to me. That's why I do this. And of course, I get some laughs out of it too. I'll be honest, okay? It's a guilty pleasure.
Um, the problem for the government is there are too many victims. There are too many people suffering from their atrocities for them to say that we're all delusional. You can't two different people can't be suffering from the same delusion.
Okay, Bryan, let's slow down. Let's look at just the population of the United States. The United States has what was it, about 330 million? Might be a little off there, but let's go with that. 330 million. And schizophrenia, which I believe you are diagnosed with, Bryan, or something similar to that, I think affects, well, I don't know, something like maybe 1% of people, Bryan. So, what is 1% of 330 million? That's still a large number, Bryan. That's like what? About 3.3 million people with schizophrenia in the population. That's still a lot of people. So, how can you say it's impossible for, two or more people to have similar issues? That doesn't make any sense, Bryan. That's like saying it's not possible for two people to get COVID or two people to get the flu. Obviously you can. That doesn't make any sense, Bryan.
At the same time, experiencing the same symptoms at the exact same time. That can't be, delusional. No, there's nothing delusional about that. It's not.
Well, you know what, Bryan? If you have about 3 million people with schizophrenia, it might be off a little bit, okay? I'm not professional, all right? But that's probably a reasonable number in the ballpark. And then you got all these websites, YouTube channels talking about various paranoid delusions that you have about stalking, hearing voices in your head. All you guys start talking to each other, and y'all start like talking the same theme, and suddenly y'all are saying the same things, and you're just like, it's like a collective reinforcement, and suddenly y'all are saying the same exact things. Like, oh yes, I'm hearing these voices, and then I'm seeing red cars a lot. So yeah, there must be this vast conspiracy. It's because y'all are telling each other this. Y'all are predisposed because of your mental condition to believe these things. That's why. That's why there's so many of you guys calling yourselves targeted individuals, saying almost the same exact things, because y'all are reinforcing each other's delusions. As simple as it gets, Bryan. Maybe hard for you to accept, but it's the truth.
It's not a possibility. Um, but because most people operate off the natural philosophy of Occam's razor principle, which basically states the simplest answer is always the truth, the simplest explanation is always the best explanation. It's easy to make someone appear or sound paranoid.
Or we could have Bryan two's razor, which is the most ridiculous, fantastic conspiracy theory you can come up with, is the truth, versus the more ordinary explanation that you're gullible, you have a psychological disorder.
uh, or delusional or whatever. If you know what you're doing, all one need do is simply come up with a sufficiently complex scheme or game of harassment. And because the more complicated the truth, the less the likelihood of belief by the ordinary person, the complexity of that scheme or game of harassment will generally be enough to cause most people to turn away in disbelief. People generally take a single sample point by way of binary thinking, the ordinary person using binary thinking.
Yeah, and that's pretty much Bryan two's razor explained by Bryan two himself. And this is kind of getting a little off topic of what this video is about. Okay, I just wanted to focus on the fact that Bryan two found my channel, Bryan two found Omni-Eris's channel. I thought that was hilarious. But I just wanted to say, Bryan two and his delusions of his idea that the government is engaging in such a ridiculous, extremely complex, over-engineered scheme just to make Bryan two look like a bumbling fool with paranoid schizophrenia. And of course, Bryan says, "Oh, there's too many people," so it's not just Bryan two, but this scheme that he alleges exists would have to be scaled up to the thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or whatever number of the day Bryan two pulls out of his ass that he claims are being targeted. So Bryan says there are teams dedicated to just him, so that implies there's teams dedicated to all those other hundreds of thousands of targeted individuals. For such a program to exist would require probably millions of people to be involved. That's why the concept of targeted individuals is so ridiculous on its face. It's not logistically possible. It doesn't make any sense. And all it would take is one person to blow the whistle on it for the whole thing to come stumbling down, and that has never happened. And remember 2013 Edward Snowden, who revealed, the NSA's spying program had absolutely nothing in his cache of files that was remotely close to corroborating anything Bryan two or any other TI said. Just want to put that out there.
Whether he knows it or not, generally attaches a single sample point to an entire group of people, and that's just the normal way people think. Who are ignorant for diagram, superintelligence, etc. The video and
The film that you see is considered by many experts to be the closest.
Your perception a bit, but it doesn't limit your perception a bit.
Well, why don't we? He's a parrot.
Okay, so this is an example of cyber stalkers. These are government informant provocateurs that get online.
And Brian's evidence that Omni Eris is working for the government is what exactly? He doesn't tell us. He just declares it to be because he knows everything, I guess.
And it's a common tactic. They, the government perpetrators are government provocateurs, informant provocateurs, crisis actors, and simply by getting a couple of people online who are informants or perpetrators to act like this.
Okay, Brian, what did they perpetrate? You calling them all these buzzwords: stalkers, informants, perpetrators, provocateurs. What are they perpetrating on you, Brian? Yeah, crickets.
Or even pretend infiltrate these support groups, targeted individual support groups. Either pretend they're a targeted individual, or they're a person who's interested in targeted individuals, or they're to support targeted individuals, and pretend they're psychotronic slaves or mind control victims, etc.
I just want to pause for a second. It seems like Brian too is kind of rambling off topic a little bit. We were talking about Omni Eris being a cyber stalker, informant, provocateur, perpetrator. Now he's going on something completely different. But I'll keep it playing for you guys.
And then to have them talk about evil aliens or other typically non-believable topics.
Yes, Brian. Someone will go on to a TI conference call and talk about aliens and other such nonsense. Which yes, it is ridiculous. I'm glad you agree, Brian. But instead of aliens, you would have us believe that CIA agents with mind control helmets and special laser beams are attacking you. How is that any more believable than the aliens, Brian? It's not. They're equally as ridiculous. But somehow you think the existence of other nutcase TIs talking about aliens is evidence of a government plot against you, who's just talking about CIA agents with laser beams giving you gay sexual thoughts and other such nonsense, trying to cover that up. That's why you're talking about the aliens. Doesn't make any sense, Brian. All of y'all are schizoids, okay?
Makes the whole group of people who talk about electromagnetic brain manipulation, like myself, Bryan, too,
Lol.
to be associated with evil aliens or some other, typically unbelievable topic.
Oh, trust me, Brian, you don't need any help from the alien guys. You already sound like an idiot.
And therefore, when the average person hears the story,
Yeah, you really think the average person is persuaded by your story, but only turned off by the aliens? Come on, Brian.
well, it's just too unbelievable. Therefore, all other targeted individuals must be unbelievable. It must be a lie. It just can't be true. It's too fanciful and fantastic in nature. You see,
Brian, if you want someone to believe something is true, you need to show evidence. You should never show any evidence for what you say. You just make a claim, and we're expected to believe you. That's all you offer, Brian.
a lie is more likely to be believed if it is backed up by lots of details. And so confusing the victims who are targeted, like myself, which was early on, I didn't understand the technology. It was quite easy to do. You can see it in my videos. But confusing the victims, the targeted individuals, the mind control victims, so that their own testimony promotes misunderstanding, is a common
I'm gonna
way in
fast
which
forward. This is BS.
and increase the less the likelihood of belief by the ordinary person. So they get on behavior. They target the victims who the government has a problem. There are too many victims. Okay, so they've got to discredit those who have credibility.
Again, LOL at thinking you have any credibility. This just speaks to the insane amount of paranoid, delusional narcissism that, well, Brian too specifically, but a lot of other TIs have. They think their story is like, wow, it's so great. I'm like Jesus Christ. I need to share the news with the world. That's Brian too. He's like the Jesus of TIs. he thinks like he's the one, and anyone who speaks out against him is like the devil, the antichrist, whatever. That's just how these people are. They're narcissistic to the extreme.
Okay, and to do that, to make them look, crazy, they confuse targets, and they have who trolls people, who gets
All
online
right,
and trolls,
rewind.
or in this case, the goon squads, like these cyber stalkers that come online. Who trolls people? Who gets online and trolls total strangers? I mean, that's not normal. So what the cyber stalkers?
Okay, let's make something clear, Brian. When you post thousands of videos, I think you're up to thousands of videos at this point. Of course, your channel keeps getting deleted, but you post thousands of videos, hundreds of live streams. Someone who goes onto your public live stream, public video, makes a comment, may or may not be trolling, but they are not a stalker. A stalker is someone who invades your privacy. You, Brian, too, are shoving cameras at your own face, pointing cameras in your living room at you. You, someone who watches you, makes a comment, laughs at you, whatever they're doing, is not stalking. Okay, Brian, you've chosen to make a spectacle out of yourself. That you get some negative comments, I mean, oh well, but it's not stalking. It's only stalking if you put some effort into having some privacy, whether it's not turning on the damn camera in the first place or having your videos online but restricting them to certain viewers. And if someone tries to break through that barrier, then yes, it's stalking. But what you're doing, Brian, nullifies any concept that anyone that you don't like comments on it, talks about it, makes another post using your image as stalking. Is no, it's not stalking, Brian.
Stalkers will do is they'll make videos and then they'll send them in to their to a specific email address. The supercomputer will then take.
Well, it's news to me, Brian. When I make a video, I don't email video clips to the supercomputer. I mean, where do you even come up with this stuff? I mean, sometimes, Brian, I think you should be like a sci-fi author because I don't know. It sounds kind of neat the stuff you're talking about. It'd be almost would make for good science fiction. Okay.
Specific software, and it will modify or alter the content so that as you saw in the beginning where there are all these triggers, these flashes of light, these diagrams, spinning diagrams, and other triggers designed to trigger victims of the technology as they look at the video. Well,
Yeah, so I can't speak on the air specifically. My production values are pretty low. I mean, I just have an iPad with a microphone and screen recorder software. Okay, but Omni has some pretty cool special effects. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have to send an email to R&M Supercomputer to get his hypnosis ring flashing around the screen and other special effects. Brian, I went to school with some people who like majored in like this, cinematography and you know special effects, Brian. I mean, yes, there is a skill behind it, and yes, they do use computers to help generate these images, but it's not like this living, breathing, well, almost breathing AI super intelligent supercomputer generating these these little special effects, Brian. I don't know why you would think that. It's an art form that we use computers, a little bit of hand manipulation to create. That's how it works, Brian. It's not that hard to understand.
at the same time using these goons to try to discredit real victims. And that's been going on all over the world. The CIA and other agencies, foreign and domestic, use these bizarre and even intimidation tactics to these stalking gangs to intimidate people, to even to overthrow governments. I mean, it's
Yeah, Brian. Me making funny videos about you or calling you out on your bullshit is the same as overthrowing the government. Come on.
or discredit people. They've been doing it for decades since they were founded. And then it also plays into society's programming that people who think that the government's targeting them or attacking them, they're crazy. See, that just automatically plays into the conspiracy theorist.
Well, Brian, you say crazy, stupid things. People are gonna call you a crazy conspiracy theorist. Like, no, Brian, I don't trust the government. It's just if I'm gonna accuse someone, whether it's the government or whether it's my next door neighbor, whether it's someone across the street of doing something, I think there ought to be some evidence behind it. Just as much that if a cop pulls me over and says I robbed the bank across the street, you're under arrest. Well, you better hope that the cop has some evidence. Otherwise, you're just arbitrarily making an accusation, no evidence, and convicting them without evidence. And that's what you're doing, Brian. And that's what me and others are criticizing you for.
Disinformation program. So discrediting a victim like you're seeing here with mudslinging and other erratic and irrational. When I say mudslinging, I mean slander, okay? And other erratic and irrational behavior.
How have you been slandered, Brian? How? Name the quote the specific statement that Omni-Eris, myself, or anyone else has made about you that's slander. You never do.
That's a high priority skill that they're developing. That's a high priority tactic that they use to discredit victims. And so you can see the little childish cloak and dagger games they engage in. But there is really a stalking phenomenon going on in America and around the world, and it can't be denied. There are too many victims. There really is people who are being targeted with directed energy attacks, like myself, especially former defense contractors like myself, or former government agents or whatever you want to call them.
You worked for FEMA, Brian, but you're making yourself sound like you're some elite CIA agent, Brian. Okay, there's no need to overstate your past work history. All right.
It's making the news. It's making headline news that can't be denied anymore. This video is, I guess, quite old. But the point is, I must be doing something right if the government feels the need that it has to go to this length.
There goes the delusional narcissism again.